Hello and welcome to Future Talks. This is a series of conversations about what is happening in the light of the fourth industrial revolution. We're in times of great change, it's exciting times, but there's also challenges ahead. So we're here at Lincoln University, joined by an amazing panel, a physical audience and also a digital audience. We're on Facebook Live to discuss exactly that, university and education. And the question on many people's lips, is university worth anything anymore? So before I introduce our panel, I'm going to just say this is a conversation, so we really do want everybody's opinions and voices. There's a slide going up now which should show how you can join the conversation and feed questions through to my iPad here, which we can give to the panel. So, and please do ask questions, anything, this is your moment. So our panel we have here gathered from all corners of the world. We have Jürgen Meyer, who's CEO of Siemens UK. We have Mary Stewart, who is the Vice Chancellor of Lincoln University. We have Charles Taylor, who is a tech entrepreneur, and he's the CEO and founder of an award-winning student startup careers app called Debut. And on the end, we have Shane Barr, who himself, he's our representative of the student population, and he's in his third year doing mechanical engineering at Lincoln University. So welcome, everybody. So we have some different generations here to represent what's going on today. So I'm going to start by asking Jürgen to explain about something that he just launched called Made Smarter, which should put all of this in context for us. So
well,
what
yeah,
is it?
Thank you very much. And indeed, we have just launched this week a report called Made Smarter, and it was a call from government. That industry gets together with academia, and I'm pleased to say Lincoln University have worked with us on the review. And what we've worked out in what's ended up being a 230-page document that you can download on madesmarter.uk is what are the things we need to do to get ahead in this fourth industrial revolution. That's basically what it is about. Now, I'll just give one highlight because I'm sure we'll talk quite a bit about some of the issues of what we really need to do to get ahead in this revolution. But one of the highlights from the report is that our research tells us very clearly that if we get it right, then this revolution will create many more jobs than the technology itself displaces. So we don't subscribe to this robots and artificial intelligence is going to take away all of our jobs. Yes, it will displace some jobs, but at the same time, if we get it right, it will create many, many more new jobs. So the good news is that universities are definitely not worthless. But I think we'll come onto that in our discussion.
Well, thank you. I mean, it is this idea of industrial digitalization and what's that going to mean for people. And I think, you know, there is a terrible fear that we're not preparing future generations for the right things. I mean, we've got a physical audience here. Can I just have a show of hands? How many people, if they could go back, would still do the same degree course? Just a show of hands. Okay. I mean, I actually think I would as well. So we've got about 3/4 of our audience here have said they would do the same degree course. Well, maybe, you know, that's great to hear that people are genuinely getting something out of university. Now, can I ask for a show of hands again, who here would do it because of the social experience rather than actually what they learned? So show of hands who thought that the social aspect, the experience, was worth more than actually what they learned. I know, one person. We've got one person at the back. Brilliant. So that's another interesting point. So what that says to me is that there is a value in learning.
That doesn't mean we didn't socialise.
Yeah.
Not that sad.
Not going to give it up. Well, maybe perhaps this is a question for you. You know, how are things changing, and do you feel that you are genuinely, you know, the theory is a valuable aspect of university?
Absolutely, theory is invaluable because it provides a framework in which you can think about practice. And the universities do need to adapt and respond to changing environments. You can't expect to have the same curriculum that you had 60 or 70 years ago. That would be stupid. And Jürgen is quite right to pull out that we're at a point where we are about to see the world of work and our daily lives transform very significantly. And universities are thinking carefully about how they can respond to that. What sorts of convergent disciplines that you can bring together so that you're not just talking about someone who's just training to be an engineer in a very simple way, but actually some of the work that you do within engineering may well include algorithms and computer science, the work that people might do around how they present themselves so that they can win hearts and minds for a new project, which might come out of something that you might perhaps do in drama or some other kind of discipline. So that is a really important part of curriculum for the future, I think. And I think universities are beginning to get to grips with what that means. There's a lot more we need to do, but actually we have a real responsibility to do that, because it's out of universities that new technology and that new thinking is coming. So in order to make sure that we have the right learning for the new jobs that Jürgen was just talking about, we need to think about what that means. And that's not just for 18-year-olds. That's also for people who are currently in work, and making sure that there can be retraining and reskilling to enable people to make that transition to the new world.
I think that is about sort of this idea of reskilling, or even changing and adapting our mindsets. Now, Charles, you're still relatively new. I mean, I know you graduated quite a while ago, but do you find that in the last 5 years that university prepared you for the world you're in now?
I think, well, I know that the degree is becoming a lot less valuable. So at the moment in the labour market, students have a fixed currency. They have this 2-1 or a 2-2 or a first, and so do a million other people. Now, knowledge in itself is super important, so I'm not saying that that's deteriorating or diluting, but this sort of stamp of classification, that one currency, is definitely deteriorating. So one of our customers, for example, Ernst & Young, they've now completely removed the degree as an entry barrier completely for anybody to apply. So if you don't have a degree, if you have a third, you can still apply to the organisation, and they place a lot more emphasis on your strengths and your personality. And so even from multinationals right down to us as a startup, when we hire talent into our organisation, we never ever look at the university degree or the university establishment that they've come from. So from experience, I see that companies are looking much more at your skills as a person, your personality, your cultural fit, and your work experience to a certain extent, less so when you're a bit younger. So I think that universities are going to need to, universities are engines of growth, so they're still very important, but they completely need to change how they fit into the economic part of society.
So Shane, how does that make you feel to hear that people like Ernst & Young are not ignoring university degrees? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, obviously, I'd hope that at the end of my university degree, it does kind of put me on a pedestal or gives me some kind of thing to show to a company. I'd say that a university degree doesn't just go to a 2-1 or a first. I think it gives you a lot more skills. I mean, you have your lectures where you might be learning your theory, but alongside that you may have activities where you're learning vital skills such as leadership, teamwork, and just how to interact when you are in the workplace. So I think...
Zaid, do you think that you're being supported by the university in order not just to nurture those skills, but also display them to employer? Because how, as an employer, do you then value those skills? Do you then test for those skills?
Well, 100%. But let me just build on what Shane was saying there, because I was reflecting as we were just discussing there, what of my degree course that I just said I would take again 30 years ago is applicable to the work I'm doing today. And the answer is it's probably less than 10%. Because this world we're in today of artificial intelligence, and I mean, we were just at the beginning of the microprocessor when I came out of being a student. But the point is what I did learn is I learned problem solving skills in pretty complex environments, and I learned exactly your point, how to work with a team of people on how to solve those problems and those challenges. And of course what then happens is you go into the place of work and you constantly develop your skills. And so when I said that only 10% of what I learned is still vaguely relevant today, what the skill is you've got to now keep building on that knowledge and making sure that it stays relevant today. Now what is interesting is when I graduated, probably what I learned at university probably stayed relevant for about 10 years. And so I could sort of take a bit of a pause, and I didn't have to certainly academically learn much new for 10 years. Now, there is no 10-year gap. The minute you get into the workplace, you're having to constantly, keep on top of the new stuff. And indeed, what I'm loving about industrial digitalization is I'm back at school or university. I'm learning every day. And the rate at which I'm now developing in terms of understanding what the technology that we're developing and we're able to bring out to the marketplace is, it's just amazing, and I'm loving it. So I think this whole concept of continuous professional development has taken on, a completely different meaning. It's constant learning.
I mean, I sort of agree, and everyone around is sort of nodding, and in the audience as well. Do you think, though, that sort of to be controversial, that perhaps universities lag behind? You said you learnt leadership skills, you learnt about working with other people, and also about learning. Currently, as it stands, perhaps Charles, you have an opinion on this. Do you think there are better places you could learn those skills outside of university?
I don't think it's quite an answer that I didn't go to. So I was at university 5 years ago. I loved my degree. I put my hand up. I'd do it again. I did a degree in PPE, and I learnt how to think critically. How to absorb vast amounts of information, how to manage my time, how to be resilient when I didn't pass my exams. I learned all those sort of things, but I didn't go to university to acquire that knowledge. It was a byproduct of why I went to university. And what I think is happening is that what's becoming more recognizable is that if you don't go to university, you can still learn these extra skills and these soft skills just as well, if not even more, because you could be in work for 3 or 4 years while everyone else is studying. So the knowledge that you're acquiring is as important as it's ever been. But the way that it's bundled and how that fits into the economic world and employment, I think is changing very quickly, and universities need to adapt to that.
Yeah, I think as a Mary, you had a point on that as well.
I do, because not all universities are the same, and actually, the environment around. I absolutely agree that a PPE course would teach you all those things. That's completely true, but at a university like ours. It is absolutely vital, our partnership with the world of work. And Shane could well tell you about the fact that all his summers are in Siemens, where he's working for the company. And that's just one example. We have a similar kind of project in business retail. We have a whole range of projects with all sorts of things, even in drama, where I trained as an actor. So how many skills from my original course am I bringing to bear? Well, I can tell you just about all of them, actually, because it is about engaging audiences. An awful lot of leadership is about engaging audiences, checking what your audience is thinking and responding. It's about using your voice, it's about using your body. All these things are absolutely vital. So I'm certain that a lot of people would say, and certainly through the generations have said, why do drama? In fact, my parents said to me, good heavens, woman, why are you going to go to drama school?
Well, it's an interesting point, sort of expectations of parents. And Shane, I mean, you chose to go to Lincoln to do mechanical engineering. Why did you choose that? What was the decision on that?
I think the big deciding factor for me was the collaboration with industry, with the Siemens training grounds on our facility. I mean, I can talk about just last week where I'm doing the mechanical control stream, and we went into the Siemens control room and we got to learn exactly how our kind of theory was applied in industry. Yeah. And that's a good bridging point. So actually, I'm learning all this thing for a reason. And
did you feel you were steered in that direction by your school before you applied? Did you have enough information?
Well, yes. I mean, Sorry, can you actually maybe?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, did you feel that it was accessible to you to find out the way Mary said that different degrees and different universities work in different ways? Do you feel that you had that knowledge before you applied, or was it just a sort of let's apply here, I don't know much about it? Did you feel fully informed when you made your decision?
Yeah, I think that probably starts more at kind of a high school level, and I think it is quite well informed that you kind of go through your career, and you know, I'd always known that I'd liked maths and I'd liked physical sciences, I liked working on things, I like fixing things. So it was kind of an easy fix for me that I always wanted engineering.
Yeah.
But then you kind of go to open days, and that's what the university does allow, and they allow you to show what the course is going to give you and the kind of course structure.
And you went for it.
So
because there is a sort of an idea about responsibility, At what point does a university become a business, and at what point do they have responsibility to young people? We've got an interesting question come through here. Actually, should universities have more flexibility with lengths of degree? Is a 3-year degree outdated? Do you think?
Well, I think university degrees are quite varied in length. So some are 4, some are 5. To become a doctor, you need 5 years. To become a pharmacist, you need 5 years. They do vary. We have a growing number of possible 2-year degrees when people just work straight through. But the biggest challenge I think we've got is not about the provision for people who are straight out of school. It's our biggest challenge moving forward to make sure that people have the right skills for the future is actually for people who are in work. And the reason why I'm making that point is that more than 85% of people who will be working into the future are already in the workplace. And if we're going to see such a major transformation, which I believe we will, that is where we should be placing more effort. So it's CPD, it's much more partnership between industry and learning organisations, not just universities, also further education and so on.
Lifelong learning.
Yeah.
I mean, so Charles, would you consider going back to university now to retrain? Do you think, or are you done with university?
I would definitely go back to university because I loved the university life, and I loved the degree as well. It really broadened my horizons. It made me a more liberal person. It made me understand things from different perspectives. But I still think there's a massive disconnect into taking that into the world of employment, and all these skills are really important. And I know from our customers that use our platform, one of the biggest things they look for in the selection process of students today is commercial awareness. And I don't think that's taught at university. When I finished university, I went to work at Ernst & Young before I launched Debut, and I was there for 4 years on their grad program, and they had to put the entire intake, 700 graduates, on business writing courses, because for the last 3 years we had become so ingrained in academic writing and writing in a way that we know the assessors would go, oh, they've now moved into the 2-1 bucket, they've now moved into a first bucket, because we wanted a first, we wanted a 2-1 to get the job. Yeah. That's how we'd been trained for 3 years. Yeah. And similarly, same in school, constant learning of past papers to get those marks. Suddenly we fall into Ernst & Young, where we're writing advice for clients, and we need to be able to write emails, to write letters in a professional way, and that whole tuition had begun again. And I think that's where universities really need to get on, especially now. There's a lot of US universities that are providing these courses online, and they're able to provide access to education in a much more democratic way. I think universities are going to have to sharply adapt.
Well, I mean, there's something, I know, Jürgen, you've spoken before that you felt that actually you didn't have the practical skills you needed from university.
Yeah, I mean, I was just reflecting on that question, is the time the right time? And I think, there is no one size fits all. So I think, there are going to be people who are more suited to and will enjoy the more academic experience more. And those are the people who will end up being our researchers. They will be the people who will be writing and developing the code in our artificial intelligence engines. And I think, for those sorts of skills, it's probably better the 4 or the 5 year study program, and ideally, we'd like to recruit people at the top of the academic grade, who have gone all the way through to a PhD, and I think, but that is probably 20, 30% of the population. And the problem is we all try and shove, everybody into that more academic stream, but actually 70, 80% of our population, and indeed the demand from employers, is much more, a practical type of learning, and they can now be very much more flexible. It could be a 3-year program, it could be an apprenticeship that develops into a degree apprenticeship, and there needs to be a whole flexible arrangements that suits the learner best. And ultimately I think the employer gets that mix of expertise and excellence in academia and excellence in practical skills. And the trick is to make sure that those two are valued in society at exactly the same level. And that's often where we have an issue. There is a little bit of educational snobbery in the UK, which is that unless you've sort of gone through and you've gone to a Cambridge or an Oxford and it's a grade 1 in an academic, you're not as good as the person who's been through a degree apprenticeship route and comes and works for us. And to me, they're absolutely equal in terms of the value they generate for society.
I mean, sort of, on both of you, was that an issue when you were choosing to go to university? Did you feel by going to university I will have this stamp that will put me ahead of people, or pressure?
I felt it was very much a top-down approach from government, and the UK government likes to trademark itself internationally on the prestige of the universities that it has within the UK. But yeah, when I chose to go to university, I looked at 2 league tables over 4 weeks. I looked at the league table for the course I wanted to study. There was an element of I wanted a campus university in York rather than a sort of a business school in London like Imperial or a science school. But it was mainly led by the academic sort of prestige of that organisation. And then in the league tables, I'd look also at the employment rates as well, post university.
That's very thorough. Shane, were you that thorough when you were investigating?
I wasn't quite as thorough, but of course you always look at the tables, but I don't think that gives the right indication. I went to a few red brick kind of older universities, but their style of teaching seemed a lot more old to me. Those lecturers have been there for 30 plus years, and they seemed quite stuck in the ways that they might present their lectures. Whereas Lincoln is quite new, it's quite innovative. Our class sizes are a lot smaller than maybe some other universities, and then having the hands-on approach is just, you're going into industry and you're going to be working on things, and that's what we do here. We can actually apply the knowledge that we gain in the classroom.
I think as well, with what's from an employment point of view, so we currently have about 60 multinationals using Debut, and what we see in the last year, we've only been around for 2 years, but in the last year what we've seen is that the companies, so they use the app to target students. So they'll come onto our platform and specifically select the exact universities they want to target, the social background of those users, the educational background. And what we've seen a huge shift from investment banks down to the public sector is they've stopped targeting Russell Group universities, and actually they've proactively targeted some of the regional universities that they haven't had the time to go and visit, career fairs and so forth. And that's great to see, that there isn't just this one bucket. Are you a Russell Group or you non-Russell Group university? It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And it's nice that, and again, it leads back to this question that there is a difference between universities. The fear perhaps in this country is that, it's all about, we want university to facilitate social mobility, and yet by its nature very often with the finance involved, we find that's not happening. Do you feel perhaps, Mary, there is this danger that we're actually doing the opposite?
I think social mobility is a difficult thing to achieve in the kind of current climate. Universities are a prerequisite for social mobility, but they don't do it. What does it is people getting jobs so that they are earning more, and the work that they're doing is of a different standard to their parents. That's actually what does it. So universities are part of facilitating that, but the world of work, and it's great to hear that your clients are seeing a much broader set of universities than before, because I do think a lot of the time innovation comes from your disruptors, the new people who are kind of coming into, just like you're a disruptive business. That's great, but then the others will follow. And actually how we create social mobility is actually the wider society being more open in that kind of way.
Well, I mean, a huge challenge itself, and there are some people who would go to the other extreme and say that actually university is exacerbating inequality in some ways. I mean, I don't know how you feel you've been.
Well, I think, again, I just reflect back, when I was in your chair, and I was sort of, or before you, I was making my choice to go to university. And by the way, I didn't come from a privileged background at all. I went to a comprehensive school. It was a struggle for my parents to help fund me to go to a university, etc. But to me, at the time, I purposely chose not to go for the Oxfords and the Cambridge. I mean, actually, I wasn't clever enough anyway at that point in my career. But apart from that, it wasn't sort of where my target was, because, I just felt, I'm not sure that that's where I would fit in socially. And therefore, I made a purposeful, and I actually purposely looked at polytechnics. I thought polytechnics were a great educational establishment. Of course, many of them are still doing great work. They're just called universities, and I question whether that was the right thing to do. And going back to my earlier point, I think that we should absolutely celebrate, the what were the polytechnics. I would say that Lincoln is a very modern, technically work-orientated university, and those should be celebrated in the same way as an Oxford and as a Cambridge. It's just they're providing a slightly different product.
Yeah. And do you think that product is genuinely what people need? I mean, we're trying to prepare people for jobs that don't actually exist yet. And if you think about university, it came about through libraries and lecture halls in one sense, the actual physical space of a university. I mean, we're sitting here in this incredibly modern space which has been constructed just for this. It's a digital space, it's well-fashioned digitally. Through there is a much more old-fashioned bricks and mortar building. And that is what university is based on. Now I don't have to go to a library, I can go to Google. I don't have to go to a lecture theatre, I can join. Do we need to actually destroy universities and start again?
Well, I mean, I'd say absolutely not, because, again, it doesn't suit everybody's style of learning. There are people who are brilliant, self-learners and can, do it all online and all the rest of it. But I would say most people are probably a little bit more like me, and I need a physical space, and I need an ecosystem. I need to bounce my ideas off people, and so yes. The way in which learning takes place today is already very different to the lecture theatres of the old. But you need that physical space for people to learn.
That's something you'd agree as well.
I think the thing is that our students use a wide variety of different things in order to learn, including going out there into the World Wide Web and looking at other online courses, TED Talks, the whole gamut of things people actually use. And increasingly, lecturers need to be navigators of learning rather than actually just imparting information. It's about directing people to different things, because ultimately the purpose of bringing people together in bricks and mortar is so that they can learn to work in teams. And that's one of the major things that actually employers are looking for. And that's why it's valuable. But you can pull up all sorts of other things from other places. And it's that ability to know what is authentic information and what actually, if you put in your business report to your client, they'd laugh at you in their face because actually you've chosen a piece of fake news or whatever.
Yeah, so I think this idea of value is quite important, but who is valuing our degrees, who are valuing the universities? There's a question come through here: how much is the value of a degree determined by the company or the recruiters? And despite a few innovations, how outdated do they feel the recruiting processes are? And perhaps, Charles, this is your area. Why did W come about? What was the need?
I think, we're launching a feature in 2 weeks, which is a suite of cognitive and psychometric assessments, mobile assessments, where in partnership with our clients, they'll be able to use the results to put candidates straight into interviews. So no application form, no CV, straight into an interview, regardless of their degree or the university they've attended. So about 20 of our clients, including banks, again right down to public sector, have said to us, once you go live with these, as soon as students come on and they do those assessments and they score within this cohort, we want to put them straight into an interview. Whether they've got a first, 2-2, Russell Group, non-Russell Group, we don't mind. So that is empirical evidence to show that in that aspect, it's become less of a one size fits all, or as a sort of a prerequisite to be successful at the application stage of the selection process. I think back to Mary's point. I don't understand why, as part of the curriculum at university, when I did PPE, why they don't have it as a mandatory part of the curriculum that each week some of your lectures are on commercial awareness. There are mandatory lectures on how to negotiate, and it could be anything from. I'm also in the army, and when I went through basic army training, we got taught how to wash in the showers. We got taught how to sit properly at a table. Now, I'm not saying go to that extreme, because employers aren't looking for those sort of attributes, but further down the line, there are quite a lot of attributes that we are assumed to have in the workplace, like basic things like how to dress for the workplace, politics in the office, how to work with a hierarchical organization, and I just think it'd be fantastic if they were actual lectures at universities which would prepare you for that.
I mean, Shane, are there things that you feel that lectures you would like you don't have, or perhaps, out of the range of lectures you have, what are the most useful, do you think, moving forward, and where are the gaps?
I've been fortunate enough that I've gone for a few work placements at Siemens, and I'd say definitely some of the more kind of soft skills, so the presentation type stuff, as Charlie was saying. They might not be as kind of drilled into you in a certain lecture, but you're still kind of taught and shown the way how to act. And then also by getting the chance to maybe do placements or year out in industry, it really gives you kind of a sense of how to kind of behave when you do go out into the wide world.
I think the sandwich placements are great, where you
Yeah.
go into study, but then as part of your studying, you're taking a year or 6 months to actually work in industry. I think there should be a bigger push on that, because that's really.
I mean,
good.
that's something Siemens. I don't know if you want to explain a bit about programs that you do on that.
Well, I mean, maybe just to reflect very quickly on that, I do think what we will see, and I am seeing evidence of it happening, is that we are seeing, teaching curriculum and disciplines just merging together, and I suspect that in 10 years' time, you might not have a computer sciences degree that sits as a computer sciences degree. It will be, a more generalist engineering degree, of which computer science is, well, to be honest with you, a very, very significant part of it, because a lot of engineering happens in software and in digital. And I think we will equally see more of social sciences flowing into some of these degrees, because, as being discussed here, a lot of what you need to be doing in the workplace, it's actually about social sciences. So I think the coming together of these disciplines we will see happening more and more. And of course, us as employers, we're keen on that, because what then happens is, when people come into the place of work, they're just much, much quicker to jump into. And I think, we were listening here at Lincoln University to a video today, which is about the collaboration of Siemens and Lincoln. And I think, we've actually put a time scale on it. We've said we've brought the readiness for a graduate coming from Lincoln University to work for Siemens down to a few months. In terms of them being able to jump into a real proper job, and previously that would have taken about a 2-year sort of adapting to the workplace type environment, and I think that's what we need to be working on.
Things are definitely moving faster, a lot faster. Technology changes, and the question here, which is something that comes up again and again: how well are universities keeping up with this pace of change in technology? I mean,
as I said a little bit earlier, it's actually universities that are creating the technology. So what you need to do very much is to bring the people who are we have a really strong robotics and automation at this university, and that is a major part of Industry 4.0. It's not all of it by any means, but it's a major part of it. So you need to bring that expertise that people are doing there, not just together with industry, so that they're using it in a way effectively, but into the classroom. So that your people who are producing the robots and the various algorithms and the vision and all the rest of it that's required for that automation, to be actually explaining what the future's going to look like in real time, saying this is what we're doing and that's what it's going to mean in the future.
And do you think we are getting that right? Do you think it is possible to say this is what's going to happen in the future? How do you future-proof our sort of graduates today?
The way you future-proof them, I absolutely believe, is by giving them enough confidence that they know they've got enough skill to then reskill themselves. You cannot teach people everything for the future, because the future is unknown, and that's what educating for jobs that we don't know exist is about. It's about creating people who are savvy, intelligent, confident, and who can move the skills they have from any one direction to another.
Yeah. And the other thing is it's what I said before, not everything is about the technology itself. So, we're teaching certain coding languages that might be happening in our artificial intelligence platforms. Yes, that was a spider that just landed on me. And
Did see it. You dealt with that
that's
amazingly.
That's the beauty of being in the surrounds of an igloo.
Wonderful. One with nature, despite the technology.
Now, that coding language that is being taught today, I'm certain in 10 years' time will be outdated and it will be something completely different. But therefore, you still have the skills of what I've learned, and you're just able to apply that to whatever the new coding language or whatever the new technology is in the future. But the real point is as you develop in your career, you actually don't even need to know what the new coding language is, because what your job becomes more and more is about, how do I apply this technology? What impact does that technology have onto my workforce? How do I manage a culture change program? How do I manage the process of taking people in our workforce along with us? And now I'm into completely different skills, where actually the fact that I understand what happens in this technology is useful, but I'm now somebody who is, much more a general manager, and this is where the whole, ideas of social sciences and all of that comes in more and more.
Yeah. One of the things interesting, you talk about, being able to future-proof ourselves, and it's almost, there's this argument about intergenerational conflict and digital natives and non-digital natives. Now, Shane, you are a digital native. So do you feel that the university around you is keeping up with the pace of change? Do you feel that it is serving your technological needs, your technological sort of native ability?
Well, certainly I think technology will kind of carry on from us, but at the moment we use technology that's kind of relevant to today. But I think what's key is to learn the fundamentals behind those programs or kind of theory that we are learning. So when it goes to programming, as Jürgen was saying, if you learn the core foundations of how to program, whatever system you're given, you'll still be able to understand the logic behind it and be able to adapt yourself to that situation. Yeah. So I think university definitely does prepare you to kind of be able to adapt yourself.
For the change. I mean, interestingly, I know we've got 4 students in the audience today. I'm totally sort of eyeballing them here. I was wondering if we've got a roving mic, if any of you would like to contribute how you feel that the university is serving this pace of change, and whether you feel your degree really is preparing you for the world ahead. I think we've got, yes, you sir, you're a student, aren't you? Thank you. Just tell us your name and what you're studying.
My name is Bradley and I'm studying 4th year mechanical engineering.
Bradley, thank you. 4th year mechanical engineering. Do you feel that the university is keeping up with the pace of technological change?
I feel it is at the moment. I feel it's difficult for universities. As Shane said earlier, a lot of universities in general are very set in the way. Particularly at Lincoln, it does things slightly differently. It does keep a bit more up with technology, the availability to learning material and the different ways learning material is delivered. It's been a lot more experimental here than I imagine at some other universities. And I think they're doing well. Ideally, personally, I would like to see more of a move towards technology in a virtual environment where you can get access to all your learning material and use your universities for different purposes in applying theory in lectures as opposed to being lectured.
Interesting. So that's an interesting point, that this idea that lectures shouldn't be a lecture anymore, sort of virtual reality, augmented reality. So how does, I mean, Lincoln is ahead of the game already, but that's not a universal standard. How do we adopt that?
Oh, it definitely is the future. Jürgen was just talking about this in organizations and cultural change. This is a challenge we share, Jürgen. My view is that actually the vast majority of lectures should be on podcasts. They should be downloadable, and students should simply be able to access them. And then in smaller groups, they should be able to discuss what that actually is saying. So Bradley, I'm right with you. It takes a little time to actually, cultural change is the thing that takes time. That's the thing. And helping people to move from one way of behaving, where we currently record our lectures, they can be reviewed online, so they're there. So that's partly what Bradley's talking about. But actually, we need to move to a stage where very few lectures are actually delivered face to face.
I mean, you can move the question on and you say there's a lot of people here from different universities. Who here, hands up, feels that a computer or robot might be able to take their job? Oh, everyone's very protective of their jobs now. I definitely don't. I mean, Alexa could probably do this, let's be honest, right? That's why I peel the mask back.
No, I mean, I was clearly joking there, but artificial intelligence can take a part of my job, and it's the part of my job which I hate the most. And that is the job where I'm sort of reading and dredging through reports and, analysing stuff and, trying to work out, where there might be problems and where, I might need to pay more attention and less attention. And, and I'm quite looking forward to a computer being able to do that analysis much smarter than I am. And then I can do the things which I enjoy more, which is the change management, the culture change, the getting out with customers, the relationships with universities, and the things where, my human interaction is much more important. So, and I think that is also generally the thing. I think this notion that artificial intelligence and computers is going to take lots of people's job, I think is wrong. I think it will augment and support a lot of people's jobs and help us to do what we need to do better.
Yeah. I mean, Charles, you're nodding. That's something you found that...
I think artificial intelligence is a long way off. I think it's thrown around heavily already. I mean, artificial intelligence as a term has been around for 20, 30 years, and we still haven't reached general artificial intelligence. And it gets people very excited and they love to learn it. And that example there where we're talking about a system that can do your reports and so forth is an artificial intelligence. It's rule-based, it's built on an algorithm that has a set of rules. It may improve, but it's not learning in an intelligent way like a human does, which is general artificial intelligence. So I think from a reality point of view, artificial intelligence on a societal level, maybe not in a military level, but on a societal level, is at least 20, 25 years away. So the conversation of the topics on, are we going to wake up tomorrow and our jobs are gone, or in 5 years' time or 6 years' time? No, I really don't think so at all. But in 25, 30 plus years, of course there'll be a transition. If you look back 150 years, there's a transition then. It wasn't called artificial intelligence, it was called something else. So will our jobs transition to something else in the future? Yes.
I mean, Shane, you're nodding as well. Is that something you feel that you're being prepared for, or people, as the voice of the student population?
I mean, when we say 25, 30 years away, that's still in my kind of working career. So I understand that I will have to adapt to these. But I think we shouldn't be scared of it. I think, as Jürgen was saying, it's a positive thing. AI and technology is here to improve our lives. It's here to help us. So I think we must find a way to actually work with AI to actually kind of make the world a better place.
And do you think your university is preparing for you for that? We've got a question here which is very true. If a degree is costing around £30,000, what are the areas that you feel are the most value for money? Out of a degree, where is this money going? What is it being ploughed into? If people out there thinking about doing a degree, what are they getting for their money?
Well, all university fees are there to fund the staff who teach, the facilities that students use, the range of support and the range of activities that students engage in. And I think it's really important that actually a university degree is not, absolutely not, just about what goes on in classrooms and workshops and laboratories. A university degree is about the total experience that someone gets. So you can't divide that social engagement that you get, meeting people from all over the world, experiencing cultures that you wouldn't necessarily encounter in an environment where you can actually explore and learn about difference. It's those things that you get at a university on top of the learning that you get, and that all has to be paid for. The sports facilities, the support around clubs and societies, so the things that students want to do, and that is all paid for through the fees.
Yeah, I suppose the question comes in the different service that universities give, and in an ideal world perhaps we'd all be doing part apprenticeships. You know, whether you would make that, in your view, whether that makes someone more employable?
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole, topic of how do you fund education, in today's world, where taxation is never quite enough to be able to fund all of your public services. It's always a tough one. So I think the answer is A, you've got to make sure that you give people the clear vision and the clear path that through the investment they're making in their education.
If it is the sort of the clear path, what would you advise people to study in that case?
Well, I don't think there's a clear. I think obviously I would give the answer and I would say, well, it's going to be anything technical, engineering, computer science in that area, but here's a chap who decided to do PPE and he's done quite well out of that. And by the way, I hope many more people study PPE because we certainly need a new generation and a bit of optimism into politics. So I don't think you can give a general piece of advice. The only advice you can give to people is to say, make sure it's something that you're passionate about. It's something, that you believe you can, really make a career out of and ultimately, can make a living out of. And if that's the attitude you've got, the 30,000 might seem a lot of money at the moment, but it will probably seem quite a small investment. Now, having said that, that is still not for everybody. So therefore, I think you've also got to make apprenticeship routes more available to people. And, and if you're not sure, whether a more academic route and that vision of being in engineering, in politics or whatever it is right, then, go down, if you're not sure, go down an apprenticeship route.
Can I ask Mary a question, which is, with these budgets that universities have, the £30,000-40,000 that students are spending on universities, and also a question from other people from other universities, is there a formal part of the budget that's set aside for getting students ready for work? So I know cash is fungible, but it could be anything from mental health, which is an up and coming issue when students come from academia. They come into the world of work, and mental health is an issue. It could be preparing them through business writing. It could be through selection, becoming more commercially aware. It could be having mandatory lectures Friday mornings or Thursday afternoons on preparing yourself for the workforce. But when you look at the budgets, do you specifically say, right, this budget is ring-fenced and formalised to prepare our students for the skills of what business requires today?
So we do have specific budgets to support students in very specific aspects around career preparation. But actually at the University of Lincoln, it's much more integrated across the whole curriculum. So yes, our careers department is there, but they work through the curriculum, through personal tutoring, and students won't even necessarily recognise that the skills that they're building up are there in year 1 or year 2, because actually the research that we've done indicates that in the first year, students are not wanting to think about work yet. In year 1, largely what people are wanting to think about is, will I have friends? Will I settle in? Those sorts of things. So we do it slightly surreptitiously into things, but as well as that, we do invest a significant amount of money into support around mental well-being, because it is now a huge issue in this country, and we have people arriving from school who already have challenges in that area. So a lot around that as well. We have something at Lincoln called the Lincoln Award, which is not accredited, and if you went to York, you will have known about the York Award. It's a fantastic opportunity to gather together a range of skills which you can present to an employer, which is not accredited, but it actually is about showing the roundedness of your personality, the range of things that you've done, from whether that's volunteering to work experience, and in that you will do CV preparation, you will do writing skills that are specifically for the world of work, understanding money. We have something called financial fairy tales, which actually helps our students actually understand what a budget is, understand how they need to prepare for things like their future once they stop work, all that sort of thing.
So I really wouldn't partition it like that, to be honest with you. You know, I was just reflecting on the conversation here, and I would say, well, look, you know, isn't all of the budget preparing people for the world of work? I mean, you can broaden it, you know, and it's preparing people for society and the world of work. You know, what we've learned, however, is that, you know, maybe since when I was at university, more of that budget needs to go on the, you know, the broader social well-being, team working, you know, factors than the technical bit. I think that's what we're learning, and you know, and certainly here at Lincoln, but it's a trend that I'm seeing throughout the universities we work with, but that's actually the trend we're seeing, you know.
I think there's a lot of nodding from the audience as well. Which actually, are there any sort of questions we have from, we've got this amazing audience from universities across the UK and other industry. Are there any questions out here that you would like to ask this panel? Because you've got such an amazing selection. We've got someone, the voice of the student population, a recent graduate, Vice Chancellor, and someone from industry. Do we have any questions from the floor about all of this, or comments on how you think perhaps your university or industry works? Is there anyone question? Yes.
Hi, so I'm Steve Foxley from Siemens. I liked the conversation around how do we prepare for the future jobs we don't know about, and your comment around we need to be confident to reskill ourselves. And you gave a quote about 85% of the future workforce are already in work. Could you talk a little bit more about what universities are doing to try and help that group of people be more resilient, to have that confidence to reskill themselves?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, because the budgets for continual professional development in all sorts of walks of life have largely disappeared, actually. So we have engaged with that in a completely different kind of way. So we have something which is called work-based distance learning. And what that is a series of programs where people who are in work in partnership with their employer can develop a project or a series of projects where they get just-in-time knowledge and information to help them complete that project, and then it is validated in an award of some sort. It's largely done online, but they also will kind of come together as a cohort from time to time, maybe over a block for a couple of days, a weekend or something like that. And those programs are exactly designed to help people in work and to help them where they are taking on a project where they don't have the skills, but it's a real life project in the workplace. And we are just seeing that kind of part-time for work program. We're just seeing that grow and grow and grow. When we started that about 4 years ago, just if I'm going to talk in income terms, it was about 500k. It's now at 4.5 million in our budget. So that gives you an idea of how that's just grown. But it seems to be meeting the needs both of the individuals and of the employers.
And and I think it's a really, really good question, and it's one that we did reflect on a lot in the Made Smarter review, which is where we started our discussion. And we have made a bold target, or set a bold target in that review, is that we want to set about, in partnership with government and education, of course, to upskill 1 million people in the UK in the area of industrial digitalisation. And again, to clarify that, we're not saying that we're going to make 1 million people experts in additive manufacturing and artificial intelligence. It's much more about the application of these technologies. And I think there is a really exciting place for universities here. Because I do think there is going to be a bit of a migration from that sort of, that real academic training and degrees and masters and PhDs, and more of that will go into the apprenticeship areas. But there is a real role for this continuous professional development that we can engage with universities with and keep that going. And it has to be a combination of online, and that's part of our Made Smarter recommendation, to create a much better online platform with accredited content in all of these areas of industrial digitalisation. But it has to be complemented with, hands-on, go and do some work, because, and I absolutely see it myself. I mean, I've done a lot of this online stuff, but I'm actually not very good at learning online. I'm not very good on my own sitting in front of a computer. It's boring, and it's just not the way I learn. And therefore, but to say, right, I'll do a little bit of that to prepare myself, and then to go and meet with a bunch of people where, I can work with them and we can learn and we can discuss. And I think there's a real space, and hopefully it's something we can do more of.
I was going to say, that brings us sort of a nice circle, really, because we're sort of coming up to time about this sort of idea of being made smarter. Just sort of before we sum up, I'd like, because you're all standing on a sort of very different point in the landscape we have before us. It's a very exciting sort of new landscape. So if you could just sum up sort of one piece of advice you would have for somebody from where you stand on how to be made smarter, how to prepare for this exciting future. Perhaps we could start with you, who are right at the beginning of your journey. What advice would you give people around you from what you've learned just over the last 3 years?
Well, I think you just need to be able to apply yourself. I think in this kind of growing environment, being able to adapt to this different situations is how you're going to kind of survive, and we need to embrace them with comfort. We need to look forward to them rather than be scared of them.
And be excited for the opportunity. Yeah. What about yourself, Charles?
I would say, specifically for students, a real concentration and ability to demonstrate things like emotional intelligence, commercial awareness, and being able to find ways to demonstrate that to an employer. So it could be through work experience, it could be through life experiences. If you're studying a degree or you're going through the apprenticeship route, that's good. But mathematically, so are other people. So the ability to showcase yourself through other business-required skills like emotional intelligence is going to set you apart. Doesn't matter how much the world is changing, that's still going to be required. So really invest time into those
emotional engagement,
traits. Yeah.
And the sort of the resilience that builds as well. What about yourself, Marion?
Well, all of the above, but make sure that you're curious. Make sure that you think about what's going on, what's happening, what does that mean for me? Just kind of constantly being curious and experiment with things, and don't be afraid if sometimes things go wrong. Yeah. Just take a punt at things. I think actually that is the kind of thing that we're going to need in the future.
Yeah, something we discussed yesterday, that idea of embracing failure as well is so important to be progressive. And what about yourself, Jürgen?
Well, the three things I were going to say have all been said. I love the curious one, be curious. But I think if I can maybe add another one, which is, and I'm talking here to people who are studying sort of technology, and technology to me is hugely broad. It could be computer sciences, it could be an engineering discipline, and that maybe pick a field that you're particularly passionate about, that you think can really create a very significant change, either for company improvement or for societal change. So again, it could be artificial intelligence, it could be additive manufacturing, it could be a sort of a technology, advanced materials, whatever it is, and sort of get into that and maybe become a bit of an expert in the field, yeah, but also use that to then become part of a network and be a networker and somebody who who can really help drive change in a discipline like that.
I think amazing advice from all of you, actually. I think, Jürgen, in your words, I've heard you talk about making the creators and makers of the future, and I think it's all about sort of inspiring and being empowered. So I'm glad that we all come around to have this conversation, because I think it is about those conversations and the excitement, as you said, Shane, that we have ahead of us. I wanted to just wrap up and thank everybody. What's most exciting is that we have a physical audience, we have a digital audience, we have a Facebook Live audience. So we are everywhere today. Please do follow us. If you go to siemens.co.uk/futuremakers, you'll be able to see the podcast of this. You'll be able to join the conversation. There's some content coming out. So I hope this is just the start of a really interesting and inspiring conversation that we can all have to get excited about being made smarter. And thank you everybody.